Good morning and welcome to the webinar on tapping into the power of labor market information. I'm Sean Lyons, Executive Director of the South Dakota Retailers Association. Today's program will feature a presentation by Melody Lane, an Information and Communications Manager for the South Dakota Department of Labor and Regulation. Melody serves a dual role. She is a supervisor in the Labor Market Information Center and is responsible for all their print and online releases. She works to ensure the numbers and data gathered by the Center's economic analysts are presented in a way that is meaningful and useful. Melody is responsible for the Labor Market Information Center's website and their virtual labor market data system. Additionally, she serves as a webmaster for the Department of Labor and Regulation's entire website. Melody has 30-plus years of experience with the department. A couple of notes before we start the presentation. The phones of all attendees are muted, so we won't be hearing background noises. We will have a question and answer period at the conclusion of the presentation. You can just ask a question at any time by going to the webinar panel on the side of your screen. You should see a questions box. Just type in your question, then click on Send. If you don't see the questions panel, you may need to click on the arrow to maximize it. At the conclusion of the presentation, I'll read the questions out loud and Melody will provide the answers. We'll now turn the presentation over to Melody Lane. Melody, good morning.
Good morning, Sean, and thank you. Good morning, everyone. I hope to just give you an idea of all of the information that we have available at the Labor Market Information Center to help employers. There's no way we can possibly cover everything we have, but I want to just give you a feel for what we have that may be of benefit to you. And then please know that the main message I want you to take away today is just that we're here. Anytime we can help you, give us a call. That's what we're there for. If you have any need for information on the labor market to help you in your business, we're here. So today is just to give you a little bit of an idea of the types of information we do have available. So how can we tap into the power of labor market information? Well, first of all, what is labor market information? And in its simplest terms, the labor market is simply where workers and employers meet. And information on the labor market then is anything you see or hear that gives you an idea of what's going on in the labor market. So if you think about it, when you're driving down the road, you see a road construction sign or a sign that someone's hiring or a business coming soon to a location or going out of business, those are all indicators of a labor market. But what we're talking about today and what the information that's available from the Labor Market Information Center is, that type of labor market data is more comprehensive data and analysis that goes with it that's related to businesses and workers as they meet in that labor market. Another distinguishing feature is that it's collected using standardized terminology and categorization. We have a lot of acronyms that we work with. But there are two of them that are very common are the North American Industry Classification Standards, or NAICS, and that's the standard categorization system for industries. And another example is the Standard Occupational Classification System, or SOC. Those taxonomies help make sure that data is comparable from, say, one occupation to another, across areas, across states, and so on. So that's so that standard terminology and categories are a big factor in labor market data. And then also our labor market data is compiled according to standard statistical procedures governed by state and federal regulations. We're a cooperative agency. We're South Dakota's cooperative agency with the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and we conduct most of our statistical programs in cooperation with them. So again, there's those standards. We follow their guidelines and their strict confidentiality regulations and all of that. And then finally, I'd just like to point out that the data from the Labor Market Information Center is unbiased. We have no vested interest in how the data is used or, trying to indicate one thing or another, sway the numbers to mean one thing or another. So that's an important factor as well. In addition to the information from the Labor Market Information Center and those cooperative programs that I mentioned that we conduct in cooperation with the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, we also are well versed in data from other statistical agencies like the U.S. Census Bureau and the Bureau of Economic Analysis. And we'll touch on some of those sources later, but I just wanted you to be aware that we have staff that are quite familiar with their data sets as well. So that's another powerful way that the LMIC can help you. So how can businesses tap into the power of labor market information? Here are just a few of those in employee recruitment, in reducing turnover of your workers and trying to keep those workers on staff, in setting compensation levels and determining your wage rates. If you're considering relocating to or expanding in a new area, we have labor market information that may be of help to you. If on the flip side, unfortunately, you need to downsize or, heaven forbid, even close, we have labor market information that can help you and your staff. Knowing where to market products to expand your business or your product lines or so on, we have information that may be useful to you. And then, of course, just a general labor economics awareness of what's going on in the labor market, what's trending up, what's trending down, what's shaking out there, what's going on. Okay, so let's take a look at each of those ways that you can tap into the power of labor market information, starting with employee recruitment. We have labor supply estimates that we publish each month. They're available by county and for the metropolitan statistical areas, or MSAs, of Rapid City and Sioux Falls. And those labor supply estimates include the unemployed, the underemployed, those who aren't working as many hours as they would perhaps like to, and also perhaps working at a lower skill level or educational level requirements than what they're capable of. And then the labor supply estimates also include a component called the discouraged workers. And discouraged workers are workers available for work, but they don't meet the technical definition of labor force because they have basically given up looking for work, because they believe that no work is available. So that's another important component of that labor supply estimate that the labor force data that we have, the next one that we're seeing here on the slide, does not include. So that's why we do the labor supply estimates, to include all of those components. The labor force data, however, that meets the standard definition set by the Bureau of Labor Statistics, as I mentioned, includes the employed and the unemployed. And to be unemployed, by that definition, you have to be actively seeking work. And that data is available for counties in South Dakota, some of the larger cities, and then the metropolitan statistical areas, Rapid City and Sioux Falls that I mentioned, and also for several micropolitan statistical areas. And I'll touch later on where you can find definitions for those areas. We also have data to help with employee recruitment in occupational wage data to see if the wages you're paying are perhaps the issue of having trouble finding workers. And then there's also candidate data available. And we're excited about this one because we launched a virtual labor market system, a new online data retrieval system, if you will, about a year ago now. But just within the last month, the Department of Labor and Regulation launched a new virtual one-stop system, SD Works, and so now our systems they're by the same private vendor, Geographic Solutions. So now our labor market system and that virtual one-stop are integrated as one system, and that has given us a wealth of information on the current labor market, those job seekers and who are candidates for jobs, what their skills look like, and so on. So now that's another powerful piece of information available through the Labor Market Information Center. So another factor that I mentioned, way we can help, is with turnover issues in keeping workers. And one of the first questions is, how does your turnover compare to your industry on average? We have data that can answer that question for you. We also have occupational wage data, as I mentioned, and again, that helps answer that question if pay is the issue in turnover. And then we have links to national resources like the ONET Online, which has interest in work importance profilers that individuals can take to help determine if potential employees are a good fit for jobs or if a job is a good fit for them. As far as setting compensation levels, information we have available are the Consumer Price Index, the inflation measure. We have that right on in our virtual labor market system. We also have occupational wage data, again, for comparison to what you pay. The U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics has available wage data for all states by occupation, so you can see if how you compare to competing states. For example, if you feel workers are leaving to go out of state for the same types of jobs. And then there's also information on a national level on a fringe benefits survey, so information about benefits. So for relocating or expanding in a new area, the types of information we have available are the candidate data that I mentioned, those job seekers that are out there in the labor market right now looking for jobs. We have the labor supply estimates, as I mentioned, and the labor force data, which I don't think I mentioned before, but the labor force data or data on employed and unemployed or those actively seeking work is by place of residence. So it's counted by where they live. The occupational wage data, the number of people in those same types of occupation as you employ and what they earn, what the pay rates are. And then there's another tool from the Census Bureau called the Local Employment Dynamics, or LED, and that shows commuting patterns to identify what's available in a recruiting area or an expansion or relocation. Okay, so for downsizing or closing, what information do we have? A very powerful database called the Quarterly Census of Employment and Wages gives us employment levels in the same industry as yours for possible job placement. And we'll hit on that data set later, the QCW, Quarterly Census of Employment and Wages. It's a very powerful system. The occupational staffing patterns, we can identify other industries for the same occupations as what you have are employed. So kind of a first step in looking at where else those workers could possibly go for jobs. And then finally, we have career planning data to assist dislocated workers in finding new jobs that would be fulfilling to them. And then where to market products, the types of labor market information available to help you. And that kind of a project would be population data. We have a variety of demographic data to identify target market areas. The Quarterly Census of Employment and Wages program that I mentioned, again, can help find location and types of similar businesses or customers, in your case, in that target market. And then the Local Employment Dynamics identifies workforce by age, gender, and ethnic groups, which would help identify areas with high numbers of groups in a target area. So those are some ways that labor market information may benefit you. We can look at labor market information in these categories here as well, the demographics information, the career planning data that I mentioned, everything from the occupational interest, skills, and abilities profilers to the training and education requirements need. We also do employment projections and project demand for workers out 10 years. And then the wage data, of course. Labor supply and labor force estimates I mentioned. The employment characteristics, we have data on workers by occupation and workers by industry. Both of those data sets involving a lot of good data. And then the wage data, as I mentioned, it's available not only by occupation, but by industry as well. Okay, so all this wonderful labor market information I'm talking about, where do you find it? And all of the data that I've mentioned is available either directly on or from our website or through links that we have on our website to other agencies, like I mentioned, the Census Bureau and the National Bureau of Labor Statistics. So our website is dlr.sd.gov and then /LMIC for Labor Market Information Center, or from the Department of Labor and Regulation website, there's a hexagon-shaped icon specifically right on the homepage just for labor market information. What I'd like to do now is focus on this menu, the left-hand menu on our website for the Labor Market Information Center, and then go through piece by piece some of those data sets that I mentioned in the introduction. We'll get familiar with this menu. So going right to our website then, and looking at this left-hand menu, you'll see that the first link is to the virtual labor market data system that I mentioned we launched about a year ago, and we'll go into some specifics of that so you can kind of get a feel for how it works. The career exploration and planning piece I mentioned is having available to your workers should they need to find different jobs in the event of a closure. And then let's take a look at Consumer Price Index as the first one leading us into the virtual labor market data system. You'll find that each of our menus for the data sets that are in that virtual system are very much the same. There's the menu pages are going to look very similar, and they'll all include steps for how to use the system basically. But if you follow the first link, it will actually take you right into the virtual system. Okay, so you'll see that this brings up the CPI data right away. And I wanted to mention that at any point when you're in this virtual system that has this look and feel, if you click on labor market analysis, this tool up here, it's kind of like a reset. So any particular options you've made for queries of data, you can always reset and kind of start from the beginning if you just click on that labor market analysis. So that was one little tip I wanted to mention. But as you'll see, we can see the CPI data by month for the past several years right on our website. I'm going to close the virtual system and again go back to our menu, and let's look at the employment projections. As I mentioned, we have projections available by industry or by occupation. We're just going to take a look at the by industry one. And again, you'll see the instructions for how to use the virtual system once you get there. But the first link takes you into that virtual system, and it brings us right to the industry projections. Okay, and you'll find that the virtual system works much the same in no matter what option you choose or what data set you're choosing. You can change your area that you're looking at, your time period, and the industry, or whatever the category might be of that particular data set. But I want to show you, let's just look at that industry. If we click on multiple industries, you'll get another screen of information of how to search, and you can see that we can search by keyword or by sector, and those sectors follow the North American Industry Classification System, or NAICS, taxonomy that I mentioned in the introduction. You can do an industry listing, or if you know the particular NAICS code of an industry, you can choose that option, and then you would just enter a code right in the search box. But let's look at the industry listing for this. Take a look at that. You'll see that we have all the industries listed, and the ones where data is available will be in the little darker color. And you can see that code behind them, like 561 for administrative and support services. That's that NAICS code. So this is telling us that that industry particular option is where we'd be looking at data for the 3-digit industry. So let's just choose that one, and I'll show you the types of data available. you'll see that the employment projections, the base year of 2014, what employment was estimated at in that year, the projected out year 2024, what employment is projected to be, the change, the average annual percent change, and then the total percent change. All right, I'm going to close that again and go back to our main menu. And I'm going to, let's look at labor force, because I talked about that quite a bit in the introduction. All right, again, here we see our instructions, but we'll link right to the menu, right to the virtual system, excuse me. All right, and here let's look at how we change area up in our search options. So we click on South Dakota, and we can see that we can either select by a map or select all areas, or if we go to our drop-down box, we'll see what area types there are. And let's take a look at county data, because that's probably the most common labor force data that we get requests for. Then you'll see that it's a drop-down box of all the counties, all 66 counties in the state. There's a button if we want to select them all, or we can create a custom region, or if you want to just select a couple. Let's say we want to look at Brookings and Brown. We can hold down the control key and click on those two, and then click Set Area, and it will show us the data. It will combine the data for those two areas and present them for us. I also wanted to point out, if you keep scrolling down, there's a lot of options. You can see a labor force graph. Down here we can see a distribution map. And these options here, to see the graph, the narrative, the table, and the map, are one of the biggest reasons we decided in the Labor Market Information Center to purchase a privately vended virtual system so that we could offer our users that functionality. All right, I'm going to again close the virtual system, and I'm going to choose wages and income. And this is the occupational wage data is our most commonly widely used piece of information, our data set. So I'm going to choose wages by occupation, and again follow the link to the virtual system. And here we have all the wage data. Now the default is categories of occupations. And as I mentioned, our wage data is all by the Standard Occupational Classification System, or SOC. So these occupation codes are from that taxonomy. Okay, let's choose, rather than this display, let's go look at what other options are available for occupations. Okay, so you can look by keyword again. If you have just a particular occupation, you want to look up accountant, say, or retail sales worker. Or you can look by group, and that was the groupings are the default. That's where we started from. You can see an occupational listing that will just list all the occupations by title. Or we can choose an occupation by code if we know the particular SOC code. Or we can choose an option over here to look at the occupations by level, and that will look at that SOC, or Standard Occupational Classification System, by that code level. So you can, if you choose that option, you could look at all the detailed occupations, or by summary level, by groupings, and so on. Let's look at the occupation listing in this case. And you'll see again, you see the occupational title, and then that's that SOC code that I mentioned that appears after it. Let's take a look at advertising sales agents. And you'll see we can see the employment level in the occupation, wage data, including percentile wage data. And again, you can choose a graph, narrative, table, map, so on. I wanted to mention too that if you click on these options, you can change what's displaying, the maps, graphs, and narrative. You can, if you want, you can select those to automatically, expand the graph or show it each time. You can also, and this is important with the wage data, show data categories, and that's where you can choose the different percentile wage data or what exactly you want to display. So there's a lot of customization that you can do as a user. Okay, I'm going to close the virtual system again. And this time I'd like to show you the quarterly census of employment and wages, that powerful database data set that I talked about. And we can find this under workers by industry because that's what it brings to the table basically, is employment levels by industry. And we're going to choose quarterly census of employment and wages. And you'll see that we on our website also have always a summary of the most recent annual data from the QCW. Each summer we publish a new summary of everything that this program can tell us about industry. And it's available by, it takes a look by county, by industry, and there is information by size group of employer too. So for instance, if you wanted to look at the importance of small businesses in South Dakota, it will give you a look at that. All right, let's go back to the virtual system. All right, so here is our QCW data, and we can choose, we can change areas I mentioned, you can change time period, because this data is out there by quarter. The QCW data is by quarter, so if you wanted to compare a couple of quarters, you could do that. Look at the previous two, set your period. One of the important things in this data set when using the virtual system is that we want to change ownership to private from total if we want to look at any private industry information. So then once we choose that, once we change that from private, we can choose our industry, and right now it'll default to the total all industries, so it'll just be that overall all industries combined. And again, you'll see that we can look by a keyword or for a certain sector if we know the NAICS code. We can see an industry listing, or we can do by level, code level again. So let's say we want to look at retail. We'll just type in the keyword, and then you'll see that it automatically populates with some options. And I'll choose retail trade, which is like the summary or highest level of NAICS level. So you'll see that's industry codes 44 and 45. So we can click on that option. And then we'll see the data available through the QCW. See number of establishments or businesses, employment in each of the months of the quarter, what that averaged over the quarter, and then we'll see total wages and average weekly wages. As I mentioned, we have wage data available by industry, and this would be the source of that data. The quarterly census of employment and wages, as I mentioned earlier, is a very powerful data set, and what that comes from is the unemployment insurance tax reports that employers liable for unemployment insurance, liable for covering their workers on unemployment insurance. And I'm sure a lot of you fall in that category. You have to submit quarterly reports to our unemployment insurance division showing employment levels and wages. And we have that data available through the QCW program. So on the statistical side, those reports provide a powerful resource of all that data. All right, so again, we'll close the window for the virtual system. And I wanted to mention the labor supply data because we talked about that in the introduction, and that is the one data set that is not in the virtual system because it's something kind of unique that just South Dakota does. And as I mentioned, the virtual system is a privately vended system that they sell to a lot of states. So the labor supply are one component, or one data set that are on our website but not in the virtual system. So we publish this table each month in our South Dakota e-labor bulletin, and we'll cover that a little bit later, but this table is available in that labor bulletin each month, also from our left-hand menu, as I mentioned. And here, as we see, are those components I mentioned that that are included in the model for the labor supply estimates. The unemployed, those who meet that definition of unemployed because they're actively looking for work. The underemployed, those who are working fewer hours or at a lower skill level or occupational level than they would like to be or are qualified to. The discouraged workers, those people who have given up looking for work because they just believe none is available. And then from that, the total labor supply estimate. So that shows you that data by county and the metro areas, as I mentioned, as well as statewide. Okay, I'm going to return to my PowerPoint. Now, I mentioned that there are several other pieces on our website that I think would be beneficial to you. One is the overview of the labor market. And anytime from our home page, you can click on what's new, and you'll always have links there. If we've just released some data set, it'll have that there, and it'll include links to other standing features that contain the newest information available. And one is that overview. And at any point in time, you can look at this overview page on our website, and you'll get a quick look at all the latest data available. For instance, right now, March labor supply, everything is based on the March estimates that were available, and you'll see the unemployment rate maps, a look at what's going on in industry trends using the non-farm worker data series, and so on. If we go back to the What's New page, you'll also see from the home page we have an economic snapshot. And what we do with this page is at any point in time, excuse me, at any point in time, we use this page to publish the most current data available for each of the areas. South Dakota, U.S., for instance, you'll see that the April labor force data for the United States is released before the South Dakota data. So right now we're seeing the April data for U.S. and the March data for South Dakota. That data is updated each month, and then if we scroll down, we can look at that workers by industry from in non-farm industries. And then we can also see labor force data for the metro areas as we continue scrolling down on that page. So again, anytime you want to know what the unemployment rate is, you know, in South Dakota or the U.S. or a metro area, you can always come to this page and get the latest data that is available for that particular area. All right, I mentioned the South Dakota Labor Bulletin, and we have a link to that on our homepage as well. And this is the department's monthly publication where we release all information from the department, and a lot of it is specifically labor market statistics. So you can subscribe to this, and what you'll receive then is just a simple email once a month when the new issue is released with a link to it, and that's all it is to subscribe. There's a link on our website to subscribe, or you can certainly call our office or email me, and we'd be happy to add you to our mailing list. You just get that once a month email. We don't pester you with other emails during the month. It's just that's simple. We'll take a look at that. Let's go look at some of the tables of data. And here you'll see all the data tables that are updated and published every month from the non-farm workers by industry for the state and the metro areas, that labor supply table that I mentioned, labor force data for South Dakota, U.S. Areas and cities, annualized pay of covered workers, that comes from that quarterly census of employment and wage data set that I talked about. And then here you'll also see our tables of data based on Department of Labor and Regulation activities, like the local office activities, the number of job seekers registered with us, the number that were entered into employment, the job openings received, and so on. Okay, returning back to the labor market information homepage, there's a few other things I wanted to point out that I thought might be valuable to you. we'll see under tools and resources, there's several things there. The labor market information e-learning series is one. If you're kind of bombarded with all the information covered today, these might be especially helpful. They're basically slideshows or videos that you can watch at any time you want to, available from our website here. And like here's one just for you on information's value to businesses. I wanted to point out that those e-learning series are available. There's also a quick link to our virtual labor market data system. I mentioned, in each of the data sets that we kind of followed and then followed the link to the virtual system. But if you prefer to just go right to the virtual system and use the menus within that to find the data set that you're looking for, you're certainly welcome to do that using that link. Another one I wanted to point out under references is the definitions, because as I mentioned, we have a lot of acronyms that we use in labor market information, and like I mentioned, the metro and micropolitan statistical areas, all those types of things are included on this definitions page to explain exactly what it is we're referring to with the terms used on our website. Also under references, there's a frequently asked questions page to help you if you're looking for some piece of information that we commonly get. We have questions out there, frequently asked questions, and links to the answers. And then under related sites, which is also under references, some of the ones I wanted to mention are, we have a map where you can link to any other state's labor market information, or LMI shop, they're called. So it'd be our sister agencies in any of the states. So if you want information on another state that you've gotten from our website, this would be a good place to come to be linked directly to that agency's website. Also under related sites are the links I mentioned to national agencies that have valuable labor market information, such as the Bureau of Economic Analysis, or BEA, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and the Census Bureau. Okay, I'm going to return to my PowerPoint here and just talk a little bit, give a few highlights briefly of some of those other sources of LMI from the national agencies that I mentioned. The Bureau of Labor Statistics, the U.S. Census Bureau has several very powerful tools, including the Longitudinal Employer Household Dynamics Program, On the Map, and the Quarterly Workforce Indicators, or QWI Explorers. And in the following screen, I just tried to give you some snapshots of the types of information available through each of those resources. But as I mentioned, the economic analysts and our staff are very familiar with those tools and those data sets. So please know that you can call our office at any point for assistance using any of those resources. We can guide you through those websites and those tools, or just find the information for you. Whatever you prefer, we are here to do whatever we can to help you. But the Bureau of Labor Statistics, as I mentioned, just some of the pieces of information that you can get from their website are wages by area and occupation for any state, often down to the metro areas and even county level in some cases. You can get labor force data as well for all states. And then the location quotient calculator is another tool I want to mention. What it does is show an industry's concentration in an area compared to a national concentration of employment. You can look at the concentration not only in employment, but by number of establishments and average annual or average weekly pay as well. The Census Bureau website and tools is another very powerful source I just wanted to share with you in case you're not familiar with it. And of course, the Census Bureau gives us information on population, a lot of demographic and economic data breakouts within the population data. There's also economic data and indicators that are down to, in some cases, down even to the zip code level. and the Longitudinal Employer Household Dynamics tool from the Census Bureau. It combines census data with the unemployment insurance data that I mentioned, and so it's a powerful source of updating commuting patterns, where workers are living versus where they're working, demographics of that working population and their characteristics, age, gender, so on. And then there's a very powerful tool called On the Map that maps that type of data for you. And then it shows also job-to-job flows. And I'll show you some snapshots of screens from that here. So On the Map generates these reports and maps of where workers are working and where they're employed, as well as some of the characteristics, like I mentioned, age, the earnings by industry, and so on. So here's one on the map, example of, shows the power of the data that's available. This one happened to be, we looked at workers in the Yankton area and showing how they commute into or out of Yankton, and the job inflow outflow that I mentioned. A lot of powerful data there. And here's those inflow outflow reports that I mentioned, snapshot of that. That's the age, earnings, and industry data for that job flow. Okay, and then the final tool I mentioned was the QWI Explorer, and that shows employment data across time and geography, and this is where we get the turnover data as well. And this just shows one example we looked at in the Aberdeen Micropolitan Statistical Area, what happened basically over the last 10 years. So this is just one example of the types of information that's available through this tool. We learned that slightly more women than men were employed in South Dakota during the last 10 years in that area. And then, as I mentioned, this is the source of the turnover data that we talked about earlier being available. That comes from the QWI Explorer 2. We can see that the turnover rate in retail trade is 10.8%, and it shows it by county as well, and you can do a sort if you want to see how those play out in a ranking order. All right, so that's a very quick look at the data available from the Labor Market Information Center, not only on our website and within our virtual system, but from some of those national sources that we have expertise in as well. So if you're feeling overloaded as you try to plug into the power of labor market information, just remember the main thing is to let us help. That's what we're here for. So anytime you have need for labor market information, please give us a call. Check our website first if you wish. A lot of it is fairly easy and intuitive to use once you get the hang of the virtual system. We try to make it as easy as possible to use our website. If you ever have feedback or suggestions on how we could make it easier to use, please let me know. But this is the ways you can contact us. Our phone number is 605-626-2314. Again, our website is dlr.sd.gov and then /LMIC for Labor Market Information Center. If you go to that website, you'll see that the contact information is right there, including an email link. And if you use that email link, the email comes directly to the 3 supervisors in our unit, and then we channel it from there to whatever staff person has the most expertise in the area that you're inquiring about. So that is the look that I wanted to share with you today, again reinforcing just to give you a feel for all the types of data we have available. But to remember, most importantly, we're here to help however we can when you have that need for labor market information. Are there any questions that I can attempt to answer this morning?
Well, first of all, Melody, just a fantastic presentation. There is a lot of information there, even more than what I could have imagined. So thank you for going through all of that, and appreciate you putting your contact information up there as well. What we'd like to do at this time, again, is remind our listeners that if you have a question, go to that webinar panel on the side of your screen, and you should see a questions box. I know that we're receiving some in our office here as well via email. Just type on your question and then click on send. If you don't see that questions panel, you may need to click on the arrow to maximize it. So with that, Melody, let me give you some of the questions that have come in, and some of them you may have to go back over previous information if you don't mind. The first question is, you mentioned that the Consumer Price Index statistics are available on your website. I use those statistics to help set raises for employees on anniversary dates. Do you post monthly CPI changes? And if so, where could I find that on your website?
That might take some additional research, and I can get back to the person who asked it, but we used to publish static tables of that data and the monthly changes. I believe it's all in the virtual system, but I personally have not, played with it to do that particular piece. So I'm thinking we'll need to change the time period to monthly and then choose some display options. So it would probably be best if we could get back to that person, and I can have our analyst who updates the CPI data in the virtual system each month, get back to that person. He would be much more familiar with how to get to that particular look.
Let's go on to our next question then, and we can always do a follow-up later on with that individual member.
Great.
You mentioned that I'm sorry, I need to move on. Regarding the CPI information on the website, are those the national numbers, the Midwest average, or is it South Dakota specific?
It is not South Dakota specific, but if you see where you can change the area, then you'll see what areas are available for. We have the CPI regions are available, or U.S. CPI data is not available by state, unfortunately.
Does the website show average wages for categories such as wait staff and cooks in restaurants? Are those numbers based on statewide average wages, or can you look up average wages for a specific area of the state? And that may be somewhat related to our previous question.
That's an excellent question. So let's go back to the virtual system, and we'll choose occupational wages. And again, we can click on area, and we can look at what areas they're available for. We have wage data available for the metro areas of Rapid City and Sioux Falls. It's also available for the Sioux City MSA, which crosses, the state lines, of course. So that option shows up as that way. And then if we choose balance of state, we'll see that we have it for two areas, basically the east and the west. And those areas include all the counties in that area minus the areas that are included elsewhere, I guess, for lack of a better explanation. So, for instance, the east area will not include the Sioux City MSA counties or the Sioux Falls MSA counties. But you can choose that. Let's look at east area, for example, and then the same options exist. You can look at multiple occupations, or if you choose there, you can go look at a particular group, or do a search for one particular occupation. I believe the original question was about retail or wait staff, and yes, you can do that by looking at, if you know the code, or do the keyword search, or probably the best option in that case would be to do the listing and look through the list and find them, or by group, and then you can keep drilling down, like under sales and related. If we click on the plus sign, or here it will use the one that actually gets to the actual question, food preparation and serving. If we click on this little plus sign, it lets you drill down to more specific workers, and then you can pick by clicking in those boxes which exact ones you want. And then if you click on your search button, you'll get that data.
Okay. Is there a chart that shows how many people are employed in each county?
A chart that shows how many people are employed in each county. I would imagine that you could do that through the virtual system. I personally have not done it, but we could certainly, again, get back to that person and help. I'm thinking a map would be a good way to go. Let me go look at the annual summary that I mentioned that we do using the quarterly census of employment and wages data. We do some maps in there. Let's see if we can get at least close to the question. So let's look at the 2015 summary. Cover county, I believe. No, we don't need that either, have a map. So here's a table that shows, and this, I guess, maps it in a way, but it just is looking at the percent change over the year by county. But we could certainly, I think in the virtual system, we could certainly help someone do that and graph it. If they'd be willing to contact us, we'd help them do that or do it for them.
Yeah, Melody, and again, I think when we conclude our questions, we'll have you put that contact information up again. Let me move on to the next question then. You may have covered this, but I had to step away for a few minutes. Are there statistics showing what occupations are likely to show increases or decreases in jobs over the next few years?
We publish long-term projections, so over 10 years, yes, you can do that, and that too is in our virtual system. So we'll go there. And I'm going to choose okay, that was a slight problem there. Need to have my, if you open one browser in the virtual system, then you have problems, so I'm going to need to close some windows here. All right, let's try this again. We'll look at the employment projections by occupation. And I'm going to choose the multiple occupations because I want to look at all the detailed occupations. So I'm going to choose all occupations by level. And then I can choose detailed. And this takes a while because there are 840 detailed occupations, so it takes a while to load it. Hopefully it won't crash on me. And then you'll see we can choose to look at employment figures or the openings with the projected demand. Problems in the long script here. No, and it kicked me out. But you can, if you choose to look at the projections by the for all the detailed occupations, then when it presents the table down below where it showed us the employment projections, you can click on, if we were looking at all the detailed occupations, you can normally click on any of the column header rows and it will sort them. So you could look at the actual change column, the employment change over that projection period, and click on the column if we were seeing detail. Right now we're looking at summary level occupations, but I believe if we chose the detailed level, which I was trying to do and then it timed out on me, but then you can click on that column and it will sort it in that order. So that would get at that question.
What does it mean when you refer to the statistics are seasonally adjusted or not seasonally adjusted?
Excellent question. And that is actually covered as well on our definitions page. But the short non-analyst explanation, if you will, from my standpoint, is when they seasonally adjust them, they look at what happens because of seasonality in industries. So, you know, your tourism-related industries going up, increasing employment in the summer, for example, or construction being down in the winter months. They smooth all that out. So the seasonally adjusted is supposed to be more of a true, accurate economic picture of, you know, overall economy look, and not specifically, oh, it's down this month while it's, you know, cold out, we don't have as many construction workers, that type of thing.
The turnover rate by industry and by county is fascinating. Can you show how to calculate that information?
I cannot actually. That is from one of those, the federal government tools that I mentioned. And I am not as familiar with the turnover data. Brenda Weishar of our staff handles those requests for information, and she could certainly help you with that. We don't actually calculate them. We just use the turnover data as it is in that tool, though. But she would be able to answer more questions about the turnover data.
Do you have any insight as to what methods are the most effective methods for finding employees in South Dakota? For example, online ads, career service, paper ads, etc.
I really do not. That's not my area of expertise. However, that brings up an excellent point that I meant to share, that our Department of Labor and Regulation Secretary Marcia Holtman is going to be doing a webinar later this summer on our South Dakota Works and all the services that Department of Labor and Regulation has to help employers find workers. So stay tuned for that.
Regarding that turnover data, can you show where you found that online for us again?
That is through we need to go to related sites, and it's under the Census Bureau. See if we do have a link directly to on the map. So from our homepage, if you look under references, related sites, and then on the related sites page, you want on the map. And again, if you want assistance getting specifically to the turnover data, I would be happy to connect you with Brenda Weishar of our staff to walk you through that tool.
Okay, Melody, I have one more question here. Our employers would like to see more detailed wage data for Brookings County by industry and occupation. Is there a reason why very little wage data is available?
Excellent question. And that all relates to the confidentiality standards that we must adhere to, set by the Bureau of Labor Statistics to protect employers' confidential information. So it all comes down to how many employers participate in the survey that's used to calculate those wages, and at what levels we're able to publish without disclosing confidential data. Those are very strict guidelines set by the Bureau of Labor Statistics that we have to follow. So we would love to be able to publish wage data at a county level, but we can't because of those limitations and restrictions to safeguard data.
Melody, I think that's the last question that we've received here. Are there any closing comments or thoughts that you have? We're at the 11 o'clock hour, 10 a.m. Mountain Time. Anything else that you'd like to leave with the group? If you could put Thank you for that contact information there. Anything else that you would like to share with the group?
Thanks for all the great questions. They were great questions. Sorry I couldn't answer all of them just on the spot, but please do give us a chance to answer them by getting you in touch with the analyst who's the expert in that area. Just again, reiterate that just wanted to give you a feel for the types of data we have available this morning, and please contact us whenever we can help. That's what we're here for.
Well, very good. And once again, thank you for a fantastic presentation. We'd like to remind everyone that this webinar was recorded, and a link to the recording will be emailed to all of you late this afternoon. SDRA has several other webinars coming up, including, as Melody mentioned, a program on June 28th that will feature South Dakota's Secretary of Labor and Regulation, Marsha Haltman. Please visit our website at www.sdra.org for details. We'll also be planning our fall labor workshops to be held the last week in September in 3 cities across the state, and information will be posted on our website as well as shared through our membership e-blast as that information becomes available. We'd like to thank all of you for your participation, and we hope that you have a great day.